Alright, ladies and gentlemen. Well, welcome back to Horror Analysis with me, Drew. Oh, we're finishing, can you believe it? We're finishing Horror Anthropology today. I'm going to do it. I'm going to finish it. Good thing, too, because this is video 50. 50! That's 10. Whatever. 5 and 0? Wait, there we go. 5 and 0, mirror image. Because I'm looking at myself on the screen. 5-0. Actually, it's more than that because I did some parts, like 3 part A and 3 part B, and so it's probably 52 or 54. But 50, holy crap! I was actually shooting originally for like a 30 video series, and it just sort of spiraled out of control. I was expecting a lot less in history of horror, and I was expecting only like 3 of horror anthropology, and this is like that we went further than 3. I think we got about 15 just from horror anthropology. I thought it was going to be a short section. It wasn't. But I'm going to do a big video today and just finish it up. Today we're going to be going over Mexico and Central America, the Caribbean, and South America. So we're into the New World. I'm ignoring, obviously, America, Canada, and United States, Canada, and Great Britain, because they're the English-speaking ones. They're the ones that most people are aware of. There's a lot of interplay between maybe not so much English movies coming here, but American movies going to England, Hollywood movies going to England. Very big. English movies coming here with fair regularity. Hammer did alright. So I'm not going over England, Canada, and the United States. But, Mexican movies coming to America, that's less. South American movies coming to America, that's very much less. Often. So, where am I starting? Okay, so Mexico and Central America. Central America is going to be easy because there isn't anything. Belize, Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, and Panama. I don't think I had anything for any of those. We had a little bit in the Caribbean. Very little, but a little bit. And a bit in South America. We got quite a bit in Mexico, though. Mexico actually does have quite a bit. What was I... Sorry, I didn't make a note. Okay, yeah. I had that note. Cool. Okay, so I'm going from Wikipedia's list first off, and then I'll go into Piper Dork. I talked about Piper Dork's channel before. She has quite a bit of stuff. She's a critic of horror movies, and a fan of horror movies. She's done a lot of stuff for the Indian horror movies. I was very much grateful for the information I've gleaned from her itchy nose, from her videos on about Indian horror movies when I was going over Indian horror movies. And she actually likes a lot of Mexican horror movies. So I was actually able to get some information from her on that one, talking about the Galindo brothers especially. Here, put this down so I can rub my nose, and you don't have to look at me. Oh, that's better. Okay. There's some interesting things in Mexican horror. The point of this, horror anthropology, of course, is to get idea, a feel, a flavor of the different cultures' horror. We got a flavor for the European versions of horror, whichever region. The feel for the Oceania horror, the East Asian, the Southeast Asian, the Southern Asian horror, the Middle Eastern horror, even the African horror. We got a little bit of a flavor, though not much because there wasn't a lot. Now we're going for the Mexican flavor. It's kind of hard to pin down. Mexican films are very diverse. There's some certain things that are unique to Mexico, and we'll be going over those. There's certainly some directors that we should go over, and some stories that we should go over. I don't really know what method I want to go in. Let's go over directors first. Guillermo del Toro, probably the most famous Mexican horror director. Pan's Labyrinth, of course, probably his most famous American work. Well, besides like Hellboy, that's not horror. Actually, his earlier stuff has Ron Perlman in it, so it's Hellboy connection. We will be talking about Kronos. Does have Ron Perlman as one of the stars. It's in 1993. It's about the time he started. I think it was his first feature-length movie. Sort of a vampire device makes someone into a vampire, and then, the guy gets younger and he starts fiending for blood, and his strength increases and whatnot, and he finds himself becoming a vampire. And then Ron Perlman's in there as this crazy like cemetery mortician type guy. I only saw the trailer, and that's the feel I got from the trailer. And most of these trailers were in Spanish too, which made things difficult. Do I want to go chronologically? I don't have anything written down chronologically, so I can't. I'll go alphabetically. That's the one I have. Oh, and the other director that's mentioned in this, even though he's not Mexican, is Robert Rodriguez. He's of Mexican descent. He's known for his, quote, mariachi style of movie making. But he was born in Texas, and I guess it's Tex-Mex flavor. But of course he does. I don't think he's done any movies in Spanish. Well, El Mariachi was in Spanish originally. Was that his originally? Oh, for goodness sakes. It's not a horror, it doesn't matter. I'll probably put a note in the video. Mariachi style of filmmaking. But he's done, Planet Terror, and he's done From Dusk Till Dawn. Both movies with Quentin Tarantino as an actor. So also something mentioned in the quote article, the article, well, it's not a quote article. Makes it sound like it's not a real article. It is a real article. The article that Wikipedia has on horror of Mexico. It's mentioned, but he's not Mexican. He's American. That's where the air quote should have been. Okay, so we're going to start alphabetically on the list of movies. Alucarda would be the first one that pops up alphabetically, 1978. Lesbian Satanist orphans in a girls' school or a girls' convent. And it's a lot of Satanism and murder and rituals, black magic rituals. Most of these, the previews look fantastic. They there's a definite flavor of the preview making, which is, I guess, an art in of itself. Some of these are, they make the movie look like you'd want to see it, even if one of these the preview was really bad, but it made you want to go and see the movie. I'll talk about that one in a minute. Brainiac is the second one, I guess, popping up. I do have a poster for this one. Now, El Baron del Terror. And it says the tagline looks to be the most bizarre horror movie ever. And from the preview of it, it does seem to be that. This guy, the monster thing you see in the foreground, has his forked tongue that he uses to suck out people's brains. This is a 1962 movie. It's black and white. You can actually see his fingers are little suction cups too. It looks weird. It looks really strange, but it looks interesting. I think most of these old Mexican horror movies, and I think some of the South American horror movies, you can watch them on YouTube. I think most of them have the full movie right there. So if something I describe catches your fancy, you could probably just check it out. Especially these old ones where they're 50s or 60s, 70s. 1958, Castle of the Monsters. So we are going back quite a bit of time here. I think the earliest is 1934. So 1958, Castle of the Monsters is a horror comedy. A mad scientist starts creating monsters, and the comedic guy has to fight them and to stop the mad scientist and save his girlfriend, which is how these horror comedies in the 50s would go. Then we go to Kronos, the Ron Perlman, Guillermo del Toro movie. Okay, so here's a trilogy here. The Aztec Mummy, The Curse of the Aztec Mummy, and The Robot versus the Aztec Mummy. Mexico has besides probably the United States in the 60s, has the lockdown on the versus movies. If versus is in the title, it's it's got some interesting Mexican ones. We'll go over some more later. But Curse of the Aztec Mummy, I don't remember what the Aztec Mummy was, but the Curse of the Aztec Mummy is a guy trying to get Aztec treasure. So he hypnotizes a girl into believing she's the reincarnation of the priestess. So she goes to the mummy, the temple, and then awakens the mummy, who eats the doctor who hypnotized her in the first place. Curse of the Doll People was the next C. I'm going alphabetically. This is voodoo zombies. Not the zombies of Rising for the Dead and wandering around Shaun of the Dead style or Night of the Living Dead style. I mean, Serpent and the Rainbow zombies, where through hypnotism or black magic or whatever, you make zombies. You create, people to do your bidding. And so this doll people is, the voodoo person uses the people as dolls to create mayhem. Hypnotism and... I have mummies on here, but I meant zombies. Grab my pen. Zombies, not mummies. Even the Wind is Frightened. 1968. A Ghost Seeking Revenge at an All-Girls School. The first one, the earliest one, is Phantom of the Monastery, it looks like. Or Phantom of the Convent. It seemed to be a weird translation. Obviously, because these are translated from Spanish. A monk, finds people, the car broke down or something, and they takes them to the... Or am I getting that confused with something else? No, I think I'm not getting it confused with something else. He takes the guys back to the convent, the old abandoned monastery, and they get possessed and start attacking each other, sort of thing. 1957's The Vampire. I'm going to put this up again because I need to rub my nose again. Oh, goodness. Okay, 1957's The Vampire. It's obviously a vampire movie. It's the first vampire movie where the canines... Hey, canine. The canines are the fangs. According to Wikipedia, anyway, that this source may be wrong, but it's the first one that Wikipedia found where the fangs are from canines. Because in the old style, Nosferatu in the teens, the incisors, the front teeth were the fangs. And, in Dracula in the 30s, there weren't really fangs. And people didn't go for the canines until this movie, apparently. So, toast to Mexico for getting that one started. I did The Robot versus the Aztec Mummy. I mentioned that before. It seems like a pretty cheesy horror movie, and it's a third one in the series. Then we come to... This is interesting. We come to this Lucha Libre film section, where the luchadors, the masked Mexican wrestlers, are sort of the superheroes fighting these monsters. I'm sure people are familiar with the luchadors. I have a picture of one coming up for the next series of films, for the next film that I'm going to be talking about. But one of the guys, Santo, in the early 60s, did quite a few of these movies. Santo versus the Zombies in 1961, Santo versus the Vampire Women in 1962, and Santo versus the Diabolical Brain in 1963. I think in English it was translated to Samson, but Santo works just as well. Just a masked wrestler, fighting monsters. Then we come to Night of the Bloody Apes. Now, if you want to see a hilariously gruesome and fun-looking preview, look up the preview for Night of the Living Apes. You will enjoy it. There's a lot of eye gouging, and then it looks like you're breaking apart a hard-boiled egg when the guy gouges the eyes. Let's see if I have the picture. I do. That's a pretty bad picture. Half man, half beast, all horror, Night of the Bloody Apes. But I have the picture of it's essentially an evil ape man, and the guy looks buff. He just looks, sort of roided up. But in the old, what year are we at? We're 1972. So, old school wrestler, the heel, if you're into wrestling terms, the guy who's the bad guy, he's just thick set, brutish neck, And then on top of that, you have the ape makeup. So, Night of the Bloody Apes is a guy who's half man, half ape. Something I think his father transplanted the heart of an ape into his dying son. And the dying son recovered, but he became a man beast who went on a raping and murdering spree. And can only be stopped by a female luchador wrestler. Now that, my friends, is fantastic. All these pictures, it's great. I got nothing. It is fantastic stuff. Yeah, so luchadors fighting, anything, any monsters you can think of. Okay, so that's Night of the Bloody Apes. Next one down was World of Vampires, 1961. It's a bunch of vampires, and the hero is a musician, and the hero knows a song that kills vampires. So that's how he's a vampire slayer. He plays some music. I couldn't find the preview for this, but I was so hoping it would be, that traditional Mexican. I can't think of it now. Because I was thinking of salsa music, but that's not it. But the mariachi. I was just so hoping it was mariachi music. Some mariachi song that killed vampires. But I couldn't find the preview because World of Vampires just pulls up everything under the sun that's vampire related. I don't have any information on this one. Hold on a second. Control N. El Libro de Piedra, the Book of Stone. Minimize. A governess comes to work in a bourgeois family that live in a forested property that they have recently bought. Julia was to take care of the little girl named Sylvia, whose usually demeanor may find its roots in the family garden. That doesn't make any sense. Thank you very much. Okay, well, I don't have any information on that because that didn't make any sense to me. El Libro del Piedra, the Book of Stone, 1969, and I don't have any information. 1972, Blood Feast, a very exploitation movie. Blood Feast, also known as Night of 1,000 Cats, or La Noche de la Mil Gatos. A lot of exploitative murder. This playboy serial killer brings women back to his ranch, tortures them, and then feeds them to the thousands of cats he has buried in the, he has in a pit. One woman escapes, slashes him, and kicks him into the pit, and he gets eaten by the cats, I think is the punchline for that one. One of those movies that's panned pretty much everywhere, but if you like exploitative movies, if you like those exploitation, murder for murder's sake sort of thing, torture for torture's sake, not really my style even for horror movies. It's that sort of thing. Blacker Than Night, Más Negro que la Noche. Um, a bunch of women inherit the grandmother's house on the condition that they take care of her black cat. The black cat dies accidentally, and then the women start being killed by something or other. The ghost. Because they didn't take care of the cat. That's 1975. Poison for the Fairies, 1984. This one looked interesting. And I think it was Veneno para las Hadas. Sort of a kid's psychological evil kid. Evil kid freaking out another evil kid. It even seemed a little bit to border on that. What was it? Fantastic Uncanny. I don't think there was anything supernatural in it from what I saw. I only saw the preview in Spanish, so that was rough. I couldn't figure out what was going on from it. But I did see that there may not be anything supernatural in it. And I don't speak Spanish when I saw the preview, so... Uh-oh. There we go. But the little girl essentially scares the other little girl into thinking that the first little girl is a witch. This one. With the quote underneath, "I want to be the most wicked of all." She's a wicked witch. She convinces her playmate that she's a wicked witch and tortures her psychologically with it until the girl fights back at the end, is what the implication was. Kind of tough to tell. Poison for the Fairies. It seemed like a psychological evil kid, witchcraft kid thing. Oh, yeah. Okay, I actually skipped a couple of these before, but I'm going to go over them now. The next one was, well, it's Kilometer 31. It's Kilometre. I don't know how you say it in Spanish, if the pronunciation's different, but Kilometer 31. Kilometer 31. Along with The Curse of the Crying Women from 1961, Jokel from 2007, and Kilometer 31 was 2006, is this legend of the crying woman, La Llorona, L-A space L-L-O-R-A-R-O-N-A, La Llorona. La Llorona. I don't speak Spanish, folks. My apologies. Crying woman. A woman kills her kids. A woman kills her kids for the sake of her lover, so their lover would marry her, not thinking she had kids. And then the lover rejects her, and then she walks around crying forever, looking for children in the woods, and then taking those children, and then usually ending up killing them too. One of those, campfire tales. It's a classic Mexican campfire tale. You get the feel of the campfire tale-ness of it. And it was made into 3 different movies, starting in 1961 and even today with 2007, 2006. Jokel, Kilometer 31, and the first one was Curse of the Crying Woman. That's 1961. Oh shoot, I think I got another one mixed up. Well, the next one's House of Terror, 1960. Also a horror comedy. And I think I'm getting the plot of the last horror comedy, The Castle of the Monsters, mixed up with this one. This is one of Lon Chaney Jr.'s last movies. So I guess he went down to Mexico and did a Wolfman movie. I think it was a Wolfman movie. This one's I think it was a security guard is frightened of everything, and he says there's monsters waking up at the wherever that the mad scientist is waking up monsters, and no one believes him, and his girlfriend gets mad at him, and then the monsters come from the girlfriend. And he has to save the girlfriend. But there's that other one, the Cast of the Monsters. I think I said the same sort of plot for, and I might be getting them confused. One's 1960 and one's 1958. They're both horror comedies. Just one of them has Lon Chaney Jr. in it, and they basically seem to have the same premise. Since I'm getting confused. La Leyenda de la Nahuala, 2007 animated horror, and that's all the information I have on it. But animated horror seems fantastic, and I think there should be more of it. But I don't have any information on that one. Satanic Pandemonium. Nunsploitation movie. Satanic evil nun. She's a nun by day and an evil nun by night. She pretends to worship God, but she really worships Satan and does all these rituals and kills people and gets naked. It's a nunsploitation movie. Oh, for goodness sakes. Oh, this one. Tintorera. This looks to be a Jaws ripoff. Pretty much all it looks to be. Tiger Shark. Tintorera. This was 1977. Jaws ripoff. This next one, actually, this is one that Piper Dork talks about a lot, and it looks really interesting. It's called Trampa Infernal, starring Pedro Fernandez as the hero. And this is sort of a ripoff of... Well, actually, you can see this hand thing that he's holding the woman sort of has knives coming out of it. And then, of course, the mask is sort of a Michael Myers mask. So he's got the Freddy hand and the Michael Myers mask. And according to Piper Dork, you mix that in with, they're in a forest, and it's like the killer guy is essentially Rambo in this forest and has all traps and stuff. So, actually, I think I have a picture. You can see from this, a blonde wig on top of the Michael Myers mask, which is even better. So he's got the gun for the Rambo. He's got the knives that you can sort of see on the... instead of a hand. You can't really see in this picture. But the gun he's holding, I think, is with the knives as well. The blonde wig! Why? But, in these sort of things, it's best not just to ask why. It's so fabulously horrible without it. So a bunch of kids versus Rambo, Freddy Krueger, Michael Myers. Kids in a forest being hunted by Rambo, Freddy Krueger, Michael Myers. How can you go wrong, right? That one was by... It doesn't say on here. What Piper Dork's videos were talking about were the Galindo brothers. The Galindo brothers not necessarily brothers. They're just a bunch of people in the same movies with the last name Galindo. She wasn't able to find any information about them actually being of the same family, and she probably did a lot more research than I did. I did a quick search, and I couldn't find anything along those lines either. But they did have several movies in the same sort of time period, 1980s. Trampa Infernal was 1990. The first, and Vacations of Terror 1 and Vacations of Terror 2, about an evil doll. Also with this Pedro Fernandez guy, about an evil doll attacking people on vacation, possessed by an evil spirit or ghost or witch or something. That was 1989 and 1991. So they do these cheesy sort of 80s horror movies, which is good. And Piper Doric was quite a fan of a few of those anyway. Let's see. So it's Ruben Galindo, Galgo Galindo, Pedro Galindo III, Santiago Galindo, and a few more apparently in these movies, in the background of these movies, producing and directing and whatnot. And then the last couple of... We have another animated Mexican horror movie called Murnau the Vampire. I think this is a lighter one. Like a vampire who doesn't want to be a vampire. Sort of like... I don't want to say it. It's like Count Duckula or something without watching it, but it seemed lighter from the description I got. That was a 2006 animated movie. And then the last one was We Are What We Are, which is Somos Lo Que Hay. I think that's how it's pronounced. Which looks to be a really interesting cannibal type movie. A family of cannibals, Hills Have Eyes type style in Mexico City. So, an urban cannibal movie. It seemed pretty interesting from the description I read. So, you may want to check that one out as well. So I'm getting I don't know what I'm getting a flavor from Mexican movies. Besides the, of course, Lucha Libre versus whatever monster thing. That's cool. There's a lot of stuff, either Hollywood copying or Hollywood innovating. Kronos, Guillermo del Toro is doing his own thing, and of course is a well-known director. This, We Are What We Are and Poison for Fairies, seems to be standouts on their own. Then there you have like the exploitation stuff, like Night of the Bloody Apes, Night of a Thousand Cats. What was it? Trampa Infernal would sort of be in that exploitation thing, and then the Satanic Pandemonium and Alucarda. Women as evil women sort of thing. Which is sort of stuff that it's interchangeable with American. So either, Spanish versions of Hollywood movies or Hollywood movies doing Spanish versions. Drive-in flicks, I guess. But some of these, there's some standouts for sure. If you like horrible movies, there's some standouts, and if you like wonderful movies, ones that might actually be pretty good, like Poison for Fairies or We Are What We Are, those look actually pretty good. as in these are going to be good films movies. And Chronos looks like it's going to be a good one. I'll probably check out Chronos first. Okay. So that's Mexico out of the way. As I said before, there is nothing in Central America. So we're going to go to the Caribbean real quick. There was not much on Caribbean. Cuba had a humorous animated comedy. So that's 3 animated right in the same area. Animated comedy featuring vampires called Vampires in Havana. It was 1985, and I watched a preview for it, and it had a salsa style music of Michael Jackson's Thriller as the theme music, which apparently is Arturo Sandoval doing the salsa Michael Jackson. I think the plot was vampires found a cure for sunlight, and then there's a war amongst the vampires about what to do with the cure. With one of the vampires being a trumpet player. The first cured vampire is a trumpet player. So comedic, certainly. Trinidad and Tobago. Trinidadian ones were. Is that on here? It's in here someplace, but I never know where these are. Trinidad Tobago. Has this movie called Sister God, a very surrealist, not even horror, but weird. Certainly in the weird category. Apocalypse movie about a woman who foresees and survives the apocalypse, and sort of, it's strange. Self-discovery in a post-apocalyptic world, or something along those lines. It's a really weird synopsis from what I saw. It was called the Apocalypso. Like Calypso and Apocalypse. I can't even say that. Apocalypse and Calypso smashed together to become Apocalypso. It seemed weird, but worth mentioning. And finally, we have Puerto Rico's one horror movie, which actually looks really good. It's called The Caller. It has Luis Guzman in it, which makes anything good. I don't know if it was overdubbed in English, because Luis Guzman obviously is an American actor as well. The plot was cool. This lady moves into an apartment, finds an antique telephone, hooks it up, and starts getting weird phone calls. The weird phone calls are from this sort of ghost in the past. It's a woman who's dead now, who's calling from, obviously the other phone was her phone. But then the woman is a bad ghost or whatever. She starts stalking the child version of the woman who owns the apartment now. So I think it's at one point the woman pours boiling water on the child version of the girl, and then the woman who's on the phone with her feels the burns appear on her skin. Aged, but she only feels it now. It was cool. It was an interesting concept. I don't know how well it pulled it off. In the preview, it looked pretty well pulled off. What else will I have notes? Phone calls from an evil ghost in the past was the premise. Yeah, sorry. So, and then going on to South America, that was it for Caribbean. Ooh, go away. What are you doing there? You can stay there. That's it for the Caribbean. South America, what direction am I going in? Let's go with Colombia first. There was an interesting looking Colombian movie. Actually, it looked very interesting. It looked very Paranormal Activity-ish. But the thing was, it came out a year before Paranormal Activity did. So who was ripping off who there? A woman gets scared in her apartment, starts freaking out. She's sort of scared of stuff to begin with, so she sets up cameras. And then when she looks at the cameras, she finds stuff happening on the cameras that aren't happening in the apartment. She's hearing voices, and she doesn't see anything in person when she turns around. But she sees something on the camera. That sort of freaks me out. I don't want to think about that too much, because I'm on the camera now. See, when I watch this again, there'll be a little guy, like over here, on this side here, behind me. He'll be going, blah, blah. That was ridiculous. I apologize. Anyway, so Paranormal Activity, a year before Paranormal Activity came out. It came out in December of 2006, and Paranormal Activity came out in the October of 2007. It was called At the End of the Spectra. I don't know how to translate that into Spanish. There was another the other Colombian horror movie was called The Squad, El Paramo, I'm assuming. Which is a military squad versus something. I'm not sure what. It didn't give a lot of information. Going down the list, okay, let's go to Brazil next. Brazil is dominated by a single character. This is Coffin Joe. Talk about slashers, and talk about sequels of slashers. Coffin Joe is sort of a Baron Samedi, hence the top hat and the keep coming back to lifeness of him. Voodoo guy. What is he? He's a grave digger, cemetery worker, mortician type guy who is quite evil and quite full of himself. And essentially his task over the course of what looks to be 15 movies is to find the perfect woman to bear his son. And he goes on a spree of killing to find this perfect woman, who's hopefully just as evil as he is or whatever, or pure, the opposite even, through these movies. Coffin Joe is played by the director of most of the movies, Jose Morca Marins, who started off doing very low budget stuff and just started making movies after movies after movies, eventually coming up with this Coffin Joe character, who he played. He played in all but, I think, 3 movies, and one of them was a tribute to him, so it doesn't really count. It's just a short tribute. And he played in other movies as well. But I mean, starting with, there's At Midnight I'll Take Your Soul, Awakening of the Beast, The Bloody Exorcism of Coffin Joe, The Embodiment of Evil in 2008, and then there's The Embodiment of Evil in 1981. And then there's Hellish Flesh in 1977, Strange Hostel of Naked Pleasure, 1976, Strange World of Coffin Joe, 1968, This Night I'll Possess Your Corpse, 67, Hallucinations of a Deranged Mind, 78, End of the Man, which wasn't a Coffin Joe movie per se, but that was 1971. When the Gods Fall Asleep, 1972, but that one wasn't played by Coffin Joe, by Marins. Five Lies is 2006, so we're starting in 64 and going to 2008. Rocket Mad, Filmophobia, and December. And December wasn't Marin's either. Excuse me. I've been sitting in the same position for 50 minutes. I need to move. And then Marins also did one of the other movies on the list called Trilogy of Terror. He did which is a portmanteau piece, where 3 movies in one, 3 shorts making up a full movie. And one of the shorts was done by Marins. So only one of the movies on the Wikipedia list was not in some way Marins related, which was a Blair Witch type ripoff in 2011 called Disappeared, Desaparecidos in Portuguese. But Coffin Joe, an evil, long-fingernailed, top-hatted guy who kills lots of people unremorsefully, keeps coming back from the dead, or waking up from comas if he didn't really die, going to hell and coming back. Yeah, pretty twisted. Interesting. I watched a lot of clips. I couldn't find a straight preview, but I watched a bunch of clips of Coffin Joe at work, where he sends, I don't know if he commands a bunch of tarantulas to crawl into a dorm of sleeping women, where he looks through a peephole and watches them crawl onto the women, and then the women start waking up and freaking out, and then he laughs at them. Or he just takes a bottle and he slices people's fingers off, and I think that was the first one. It was interesting. It looked... Coffin Joe was worth checking out. Even if you just type in Coffin Joe into YouTube and check out some of the clips. It seemed interesting. And he's like one of these huge Brazilian pop culture icons, apparently. And, after that many films, why wouldn't he be? He's essentially he's Freddy Krueger and Michael Myers and all those people, but he started in 64. The first slashers. Psycho has been sequeled, and it didn't need to be. But 64. That's a long time ago. And then he's been doing it since 2000 till 2008, and he's still alive, so he could still be doing it. There could be more on the way. It's one hell of a franchise, anyway. Yeah. So the other movie in Brazil that disappeared. 6 friends disappear in the woods and after a party, and they took a camera to the party, so the camera's what's filming it in this Blair Witch style. This, found footage genre. What else do we have? Okay, so dropping down a bit more. Oh, Uruguay. Wait, hold on. Before we go to Uruguay, let's go to Peru. Peru has one movie. It's Anaconda, which wasn't obviously a Peruvian movie, produced movie. It was an American movie. 1997. And of course, it had J-Lo in it. Owen Wilson. Ice Cube. Ice Cube or Ice T? No, Ice Cube. And it was bad. It's not a good movie. But that's all I have for Peru, so I thought I'd mention it. Going down to Uruguay, I don't have any movies, but I have an interesting author. And this is the only author I've really found in this section. Besides, of course, Guillermo del Toro, which I didn't mention earlier. But he, of course, is a writer as well. He wrote most of his movies, and of course, he wrote... he has a series of horror books, which I didn't think to... which I've mentioned before, but forgot about. I'm going to... The Strain, I think it is. Yes, it is. The Strain. The Strain trilogy. With Chuck Hogan as the other author. The Strain, The Fall, and The Night Eternal is the sequels. But there's an earlier Uruguayan? Is that the proper term? Author of Uruguay called Horacio Quiroga. Horacio Quiroga, I've actually been reading and rereading and rereading the synopsis of his life and stuff, his biography on Wikipedia. Really interesting dude. Like, twisted and messed up and Poe-esque. And tragic figure. Like, the amount of people that just shot themselves accidentally or on purpose in his life is ridiculous. I don't have his dates. Okay, let me I'm not exactly prepared on this stuff. Horacio Quiroga. Quiroga. 1878 to 1937. He was a Uruguayan writer. He really got influenced by Poe. He really got influenced by Guy de Maupassant. And that sort of, I guess it was when Poe and Guy de Maupassant was sort of trickling down to Spanish translations were trickling down into Uruguay. So 1870s was when he was born. So yeah, it would be about that. I can't dispersal of information. I don't have a chart on it, obviously, but it makes sense that if Poe died in the 1840s, 1870s would be when dispersal of Spanish stuff would hit Uruguay. Yeah, that makes sense. He became a big fan of Poe, read lots of Poe. He read lots of what do I have here? Edgar Allan Poe, Guy de Maupassant, oh man, his life is ridiculous. Rudyard Kipling, that's the other guy I was after. He wrote most of his books about being set in the jungle. So, of course, Rudyard Kipling being focusing mostly on the Indian and Asian jungle. So it's sort of taking the Rudyard Kipling thing and putting it in the Uruguayan South American jungle, and sometimes Argentinian, because I think he spent some time in. He had some problems. The dude had some problems. In the same way that Poe had some problems, the dude had some problems. If you want to read up about him, go for it. I wish I could find some of his works in English. I looked on LibriVox. I was only able to find the books in Spanish, and I don't speak Spanish, so it doesn't help me at all. But one of the horror stories that is mentioned in the article is The Feather Pillow, 1907, and then Tales of Love and Madness, 1917. He's a messed up dude. But he takes Poe and he takes Guy de Maupassant, and he takes that jungly feel from Rudyard Kipling, and he sets it in this South American jungle that is really wanting to kill people. It's man versus nature, and you know that nature is out to get you as man. If you let your guard down for a second, it will kill you. And that's sort of the type of setting he has in the story, from what I've seen. From what I'm getting from this Wikipedia article, anyway. It looked cool. Horacio Quiroga. I'm going to see if I can find him in English, because it looks cool. And good luck on trying to find the same. And then we go to Argentina. Argentina, why am I saying it weird? My apologies. With very few exceptions, Argentina has some of the weirdest looking low budget movies. I wrote these down after looking at the Wikipedia, horror films by country list. If you look up horror films by country in Google, it'll give you the list on Wikipedia. There was 36 Steps, 36 Pasos, 2006. Attack of the Killer Hog, 2000. Blood of Virgins, 1967. Headless Woman, 1947 and 2008, depending on which version you're going for. Plaga Zombie, Zombie Plague in English, 1, 2, and 3. Snuff 102, which I'll talk about a little bit more. Somebody's Watching You, which I have no information on. And Winter Visitor. Out of these, 36 Pasos, Attack of the Killer Hog, Plaga Zombie 1, 2, and 3. So that's 6. And Winter Visitor all look to be really, really, really low budget. I mean, like, Trauma level of low budget. It's, or, what's the guy's name? What's the guy's name? Spanish dude. Actually, I have one of his films here. Hold on a second. That's what it is. It's Jesus Franco. So it's like Jesus Franco level. Well, probably Jesus Franco influenced, considering that these are 90s, 2000s, and Franco started in Spain. So he's doing Spanish movies anyway in the 70s, 60s. So yeah, Argentina probably has a lot of Jesus Franco influence. The common language sort of thing. And that sort of low budget horror movies. 36 Steps, 36 Pasos, 2006. Very low budget slasher. You know, there was a chainsaw that didn't, because you have to have a chainsaw in a slasher movie, right? Women in bikinis. It looked like the movie was an excuse to show women in bikinis and to kill them. And then, of course, they start fighting back against the slasher guy. Or if it's one of them, I don't know if they even went for that sort of thing. Attack of the Killer Hog. It looked to be a low-budget mind melt of a girl playing with the doll, turning into zombies, turning into a stuffed pig, killing people with a knife, psychedelic weirdness, drugs and craziness. Blood of the Virgins. It looked to be... Actually, I like the preview on this one. Vampires, obviously. 1967. So, it looked like a vampire seduction thing. A girl in the whatever hundreds, 1800s, goes on her honeymoon but gets bitten by a vampire and gets seduced by a vampire. And then, in the 1960s, present day, whatever, people go to that house for the weekend, and the woman vampire tries to seduce the men, the man vampire tries to seduce the women, and, kill them, and there's stuff going on. And it looked pretty good. In the 60s, what would it be? Hammer style of movies. Or, Italian giallo movies. Headless Woman 1947 and 2008. I didn't find anything on the 47 one, and I didn't want to see the preview for the 2008 one. A woman hits a boy or a dog with a car and then starts losing her mind. Is a 2008 one, but I'm not sure what the 1947 one. You would think with the title The Headless Woman, you'd have a ghost of some sort, right? But that's not the way this seems that the 2008 one's playing out. So I'm not sure if the 1947 is the 2008 is a direct remake of the 1947 or not. One has info and one doesn't, so I can't make that call. Plaga Zombie. Zombie farce, I think would be the proper term for this. Comedy horror series, 1997, 2001, and 2012. Very low budget. It looks like everybody and their buddies. It was made by some guy and his buddies. The zombie makeup looks to be low-end Halloween makeup. Paint yourself with white cake and put a red dot on your head so it looks like you're shot with a painted trickle of blood or something on your mouth or whatever. It looks, or you paint yourself green because you're that kind of zombie. So you have the white zombies and the green zombies, and and then chase the guy, who are the living guys. I don't know why I did air quotes there either. Chase the survivors. It looked bad, actually, but it looked farcical, and that means it's possibly good. But they all looked so low budget in this country. Argentinian movies looked really, really low budget. Like Trauma, Jesus Franco level of low budget. Somebody's Watching You is the other low budget one. No, it's not. Somebody's Watching You is the one I don't have any information on. Because if you type in Somebody's Watching You, you get lots of music called Somebody's Watching You. And even when I typed in the Spanish translation, whatever that was. I couldn't find it. Winter Visitor, a psychological slasher movie about killing kids. A guy killing kids, and the only person that knows it has mental problems, so no one believes him. But it also looks pretty low budget. Not as low budget as some of the other ones, but pretty bad, or pretty low. It looked like it would be interesting, but I hate to sound like a snob, but I think if I were to watch it, I'd wait for the Hollywood remake. The one that looked more the next step up, I suppose, looks the most disturbing, called Snuff 102. Extremist pseudo-snuff movies. A reporter talking about snuff things starts doing research into this world of snuff film, and she finds a website, and she talks to this guy who's a expert who ends up being the killer, and she ends up being the victim, obviously. So she finds this website where women are being tortured and killed, and then victim 101, victim 102, victim 100, victim 101, and then victim 102 ends up being her, I think, from what I guessed. But it actually had some plot from what it looked like. Maybe not much of a plot. And apparently that did have a lot of animal torture that wasn't faked. So not getting one of those stickers saying no animals were harmed in the making of the film, because apparently they were. From what I saw, I might be mistaken. This is not my style of movie. The snuff stuff doesn't do it for me. What else do we have in this? So that's Argentina. Argentine movies. Pardon me. And I think that's South America. I don't have anything else for South America. Yeah. So, and that, my friends, is horror anthropology too. Whew. Man. Glad I got that done. I'm actually going on vacation, so I really wanted to get that done tonight. So next time, actually, we're going to go into our next section. I'm going to research it while I'm on vacation, but we're going to go into our next section, which is non-narrative horror. I have planned horror visual art, horror poetry, horror music, horror video games, horror desktop games. I think that's it. I'm probably missing something or other, so I'll just say that I'm probably missing something or other. Yeah. So in our last section, we're on to section E. We started 50 videos ago in section A, and we're going to start section E now. Man, what a trip. I'm really enjoying this. And I still have to upload a lot of movies. I think at this point I've only uploaded to the 60s. And it's December. I started in March. Alright, folks. I'll be back next time. I'll start non-narrative horror on Horror Analysis. I'm Drew. Thanks for watching Horror Analysis, and we'll see you next time.